In today's show, Shaedon Sharpe needs surgery. Let's talk about what that means for the Blazers ahead of the trade deadline and for the remainder of the season. Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter Mike Richmond. You're listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. Thanks for making the show your first listen. Coming at you each and every weekday, Monday through Friday. So tell your friends about it. Make it a part of your daily routine. Make your first listen to Locked On Blazers your team every day. In today's show, some bummer news to kick off the program. Shaedon Sharpe is set for surgery. Try to say that 4 times fast. Sharpe's likely done for the season. I guess there's a world in which he comes back, but it seems pretty unlikely considering where they're at and where he'll be at as the season ticks down. His season is likely done. We'll talk about how he got here, his season, and what it means for the Blazers. I think this has real implications for the trade deadline. I think all of the Blazers aren't going to trade Malcolm Brogdon stuff. It's kind of coming into much clearer focus now. And then I want to talk about what I think is the most important part of the remainder of the season. Knowing that Shaedon Sharpe won't be back, what I believe is the most important focus for the Blazers to find out for the remainder of this year. That's what we'll talk about to close the show. But first, let's talk about Sharpe. The Blazers on Tuesday released the following press release. During Sharpe's ramp-up, they just called him Sharpe, not Shaedon Sharpe in the press release. During Sharpe's ramp-up in basketball activities to return to play, he experienced worsening of symptoms. Due to his lack of progression, it has been determined that Sharpe will undergo corrective surgery to address a core muscle injury. Surgery is tentatively planned for later this week. A timeline for return to play will be determined once surgery is completed. That word salad means that Shaedon Sharpe's season is likely done. He's been dealing with an abductor strain, and now they're calling a core injury. The abductor strain is your groin. It's all in the middle, kind of connected in there, and now they're calling it, they're to address a core muscle injury. I don't know enough about science, but I think this is the same thing that he's been dealing with, and it's been hanging around since even before Christmas. He popped up first on the injury report just before the December 19th game against the Phoenix Suns. Questionable abductor strain. It's like, no, I didn't know he was hurt. And that's the first time we heard of it in public. He played 8 minutes that game, December 19th, against the Phoenix Suns. He played 1 shift in the first quarter, sat out at the end of the bench. Clearly wasn't, it's like, oh, he's not coming back in. He must be hurt. Must be the groin thing. He misses the next 5 games. Bummer. It's like, at the time, he just wanted to get healthy, right? He just wanted to get healthy. And the Blazers didn't initially announce a timeline. It was like, yeah, hopefully he'll be back soon. He misses 5 games, it's about just shy of 2 weeks. And he finally returns, or does return, finally. He returns about 12 days later, January 1st, and he played in the next 6 games. He started on a minutes restriction. He was coming off the bench. He wasn't playing, he was playing under half the game, under 24 minutes. They didn't make it clear. Chauncey Billups doesn't say what the minutes restriction is. He just says minutes restriction, and then the guys play, and we have to guess what the number is. That's fine. So he was probably right in that 22 to 24 range. He was playing about in the 22 to 24 range the first couple games. But then in a game against Brooklyn, on that brutal road trip in early January, he played really well, had 21 points. The game went to overtime. He played 40 minutes, and you thought, oh, Shea might be back. He might be ready to go, and they've obviously taken the cap off his minutes and letting him play a whole bunch, and this is great. If it doesn't go overtime, he played down the stretch of the fourth quarter, would play 35 minutes, big-time starters minutes, because they needed him, and he was good, and he deserved to play, and he was like, okay, yay, he's back. Then he played 2 more games, and he left the game a couple days later against OKC on January 11th. That was a game Blazers lost by 60. He left in the third quarter and has not played since. And now the Blazers, a couple weeks later, at the time it was like he'll be reevaluated in 2 weeks. When the Blazers released their last week they gave an update, and it was like he's ramping up to doing on-court activities, but a timeline will be like more updates will be shared when appropriate, I believe was the language, and that's never good. It's never good when it's like he'll be reevaluated in 2 weeks. He's been reevaluated. We're not telling you anything else. Like it's just it seems like he was going to be out for an extended period of time, and now you kind of know it's like they tried to get him back out there and he just wasn't right. And the most important thing he can do is get right. In this season, like there's no reason to push it. There's no reason to let him get back there. There's no reason to chase it. You just don't need to chase it with Shaedon Sharpe. What you need Shaedon Sharpe to be is healthy in the fall. In his third NBA season, you need him to be really stinking good. Like that's the plan with this team. He finished this year averaging 15.9 points, a career high, 5 rebounds, a career high, 2.9 assists, a career high in 32 games. Started 25 of them. Shot was a little bit worse with more volume, 40% from the floor, 33% from three, but did shoot better from the free throw line, 82.3%. There was a stretch there in December when he was cooking. 5 straight games of at least 25 points, and it was I think that might have been the most fun stretch of the season, was when it was like, you know what, Shaedon Sharpe might be that dude. 5 games implies that there's 77 other games. Like I get it, but like there was a stretch, and you could see it, and it's like once you do it 3 times, you're on the scouting report, right? It's like he's had 25 in 3 straight games. We have to deal with him, and he came back and had a couple others, and then whether the injury kind of caught up with him and he just like never was the same. It's hard to know exactly when it started bothering him. But we know that, the week before Christmas, he was on the injury report. So he's been dealing with it at least since then. And when he returned to play, he was not always the best version of himself. And that might've been injury. That might've been new circumstances on the team, whatever it might be. But like there was a stretch when he was really stinking good. A brief stretch, a brief glimpse. We've now had 2 of these brief glimpses of Shaedon Sharpe in his 2 seasons where it's like, yeah, that. If he could do that every night, he's really special. He's 20 years old. You want him to get right, get healthy. My preliminary research on a core muscle injury and core muscle surgery, it's like I don't know what the procedure is called, so it's not the best use of internet searches, but Drew Holiday was projected at about 6 weeks. Damian Lillard was projected about 6 to 8 weeks. Nazir Little was projected about 6 weeks, and then full recovery when the Blazers when he underwent a similar procedure. Those are all similar procedures of a sort of recent vintage. Sharpe could conceivably in 6 weeks be available at the tail end of the season. I wouldn't be against it. I like watching him play, but I don't see a lot of upside in bringing him out for the final, 6 games of this season. The Blazers can do whatever they want. Shaedon Sharpe can do whatever they want, but I would assume that they err on the side of caution, and that this is the last we've seen of him, and that stinks. That stinks. Because he's fun to watch. Yeah, I really do think that 5-game stretch was about as most fun as they've been all season. They're playing better now. They're starting to win them. Play more competitive basketball regularly of late. So maybe they'll pass it up over the next handful of games. And I'll say like, that stretch right around the All-Star break was really fun. But like, injuries stink. They're part of the game, but they stink. Every year teams deal with it, and it's a real bummer. And Sharpe was going to be a bright spot for this season, and it's just. It stinks. It stinks. It has real on-court implications, though. Like, it has on-court implications, and it has some off-court implications as well. As covered at length yesterday, the Blazers have been reportedly not super. Basically, have sent all the signals to everyone that they possibly can that they do not want to trade Malcolm Brogdon, and Shaedon Sharpe's injury becoming public today. Obviously, the Blazers probably knew this before they told us. Like that kind of puts it into focus why they would be resistant to trade Malcolm Brogdon. I am, on the record that I think the Blazers should try to move Brogdon for sort of numbers crunch when everyone is healthy reasons. When everyone's not healthy, the numbers crunch doesn't exist. But I will say this: Shaedon Sharpe's injury should not dictate their willingness or pursuit of a Malcolm Brogdon trade. It just shouldn't be part of the calculation. only one thing should be part of the calculation: the market. Let's talk about the market. Let's talk about Shaedon Sharpe. Let's talk about Malcolm Brogdon. Let's talk about the trade deadline. Here we are in trade deadline week. But first, let me tell you about eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. It's what brings home the winning trophy. It's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers to roof racks to exhaust kits to LED headlights and more. Whether you're into speed or power or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts to choose from for your ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, baby, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into an MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Today's show is also brought to you by the good folks at PrizePicks. Is daily fantasy made easy? America's #1 sports app with over 30 million members. It's the easiest, most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. It's just you against the numbers. You pick more than or less than on a 2 or 6 player stat projections, and then you watch the winnings roll in. And right now at PrizePicks, it's demon time. You can win up to 100 times your money with as little as 4 correct picks. You could turn $10 into $1,000. Okay, here's how it works. Demons and goblins are the new, most exciting way to play over at PrizePicks. The squares that are marked with red demons or green goblins get you different payouts, and you can now win up to 100 times your money with just 4 of those picks. So look for the little demons, look for those little goblins when you're making your entry. Go get your money. And how you go get your money is go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use the code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use the code LockedOnNBA. They'll match you dollar for dollar on your first deposit up to $100. It's PrizePicks, daily fantasy made easy. All right. So if you're an everydayer, you know that yesterday's show was all about the Blazers and some extensive reporting about how the Blazers weren't interested in trading Malcolm Brogdon. And today on NBA Today, Adrian Wojnarowski joined the chorus of folks saying that the Blazers are not expected to move Malcolm Brogdon at the trade deadline. And I have said a bunch, but I'll repeat it again here because some of you aren't everydayers and some of you are just bad at listening. Choose who you are. Identify yourself in that sentence. But it's the Blazers don't. If the Blazers don't trade Malcolm Brogdon, it's not the friggin' end of the world. It's not like the greatest tragedy that has ever befallen a basketball team. I am of the belief that they should pursue it. But one of the main reasons I was of that belief was because when healthy, there's numbers crunch. Minutes for Anthony Simons and minutes for Shaedon Sharpe and minutes for Scoot Henderson. You want to prioritize all those guys playing, particularly down the stretch run of the season, and having Malcolm Brogdon maybe, eat into their minutes is maybe overstated, but like be on the court at the end of games when you'd rather just, me, in my personal opinion, would just rather have the young guys out there fail, figure out how they fail. Or moreover, if you're protecting them from failure and saying, okay, we're going to have Malcolm Brogdon kind of steady the ship and all these things, when they do play well, not being able to like properly reward them and get your young guys on the court seems like a misuse of this, particularly the stretch run of the season. And so I was a big proponent of trading Malcolm Brogdon. That doesn't exist, and I've said it a bunch. With 3 guards, there is no numbers crunch. With 4 guards, there's a numbers crunch. With 3, you need 3 guards. In fact, the Blazers are kind of light on guards. Though they should probably look to add one. They got to add some 10-day guys here in the future, and then maybe they'll add someone to a 2-way contract should they convert Duop Reith to a regular NBA deal, which I believe they will. So, they could use just like more dudes who could dribble on the roster, straight up. But I think it's pretty clear now with all of the reporting that's out there and with the Shaedon Sharpe news that has struck that the Blazers don't want to trade Malcolm Brogdon because they're going to need him to play. They need him. And they appreciate his competence and they appreciate what he brings. Like, he's good. I feel like I've said this a million times, but again, not everyone listens every day. Not everyone's a good listener. He's good. Like that's one of the things about him. He's helpful. I'm not anti-helpful or anti-winning. I just For me, this season is about gathering as many data points about the young Blazers moving forward as possible. More on that later in the show. But it seems like they're not going to trade him. Seems like all the signs point to not trading him. And again, it's not a catastrophe. As I mentioned on yesterday's show, and we'll go do this quickly, like the market is likely to change in the summertime, and there might be better and more deals out there, as there's a bunch of teams that are going to be expensive, and the new CBA is going to be more. It's harder if you are a particularly expensive team. They maybe need to move around. There's some more for apron teams in the first and second apron. Those are teams like way into the tax. There might be some incentives to move around because there are some more hindrances to building a roster, and maybe that those teams are more willing to make trades then. And then there's, after the 2024 draft, maybe teams are willing to trade picks into the future in 25 and 26, and the Blazers don't really need 2024 draft picks, right? They have likely to have 2 first rounders. They have their own, and they're very likely to have the Warriors draft pick because the Warriors aren't very good. And they have 2 second rounders. Like, they don't need a 5th rookie in this draft class. So, sure. All of that. Totally true, totally fair. I've kind of laid it out a bunch of times. Probably going to have to stop talking about it because I'm wearing myself out with repeating the sort of Malcolm Brogdon logic that I've walked you, dear listener, through several times. And I'm not confused by it. I maybe just disagree with it. That's kind of what this is. The Blazers aren't going to trade Malcolm Brogdon now that Shaedon Sharpe got hurt, and for obvious reasons, and for very logical reasons. But I think the only thing that should dictate whether the Blazers don't trade Malcolm Brogdon in the next 2 days, and they're not going to anyway, so it doesn't matter, but the only thing that should dictate whether they don't trade Malcolm Brogdon in the next 2 days is the market. If the market for Malcolm Brogdon stinks, you don't need to rush out and take a bad trade. If the market for Malcolm Brogdon stinks now, it's probably not likely to get wholly different in the summertime, but it could be different, and a little bit different is maybe worth waiting for, right? And chasing down a bad deal now is not particularly valuable. And I don't pretend to know all the deals out here. I'm not going to even kick up fake trades that I think are likely to have. And the fake trades the 2 teams that I've identified often on the podcast and I think are the most speculated teams for Malcolm Brogdon's suitor would be the Orlando Magic and the New York Knicks. It would be, in my mind, and I'm sure the Blazers have talked to these teams, in my mind, it would be malpractice not to at least call them again and figure out what the deal is heading up to the trade deadline. I understand why they wouldn't make a deal with Shaedon Sharpe hurt, right? Because they need Malcolm Brogdon. They need him every night. They're going to need him to play a lot every night, 30 minutes every night. They're going to need him. They're going to absolutely need him. But you're allowed to trade for guards. That's totally legal. You're allowed to trade for guards. You could trade for a player at his position that's younger and cheaper to get the Blazers out of the tax in the future. You could trade for sort of, if you get a pick down the line. Like I said, they don't need 2024 picks, but you're allowed to trade for picks in future drafts. Maybe those aren't available. And again, that's the market. If the thing that should dictate the Blazers' decision-making is not the health of Shaedon Sharpe and is not the desire to be competent over the final 25 games of the regular season. The thing that should dictate what the Blazers do is the market for Malcolm Brogdon. If there is a good trade out there, they should not balk at it in order to be a little bit better this season. I think there's an idea that Malcolm Brogdon provides a great deal of valuable leadership, and I'm sure that he does, right? I've seen him out there, particularly talking to Shaedon Sharpe. They seemed like they had a really good it seemed like they had a really good rapport. And Malcolm Brogdon is a pro's pro. He says the right things. He's fun to talk to in the locker room, although I don't have a super close relationship with him by any means. I've talked to him 3 times. But he's an absolute, the professional's professional, the pro's pro. Good dude, you'd want him in the locker room, has some value there for sure. But if a better trade is there, Malcolm Brogdon will have spent 50-some games with the Blazers, right? He's done it. He's done his work. And I'll say this, and I will complain about this a bunch. This is what I do on the podcast. I complain a little bit. But if Malcolm Brogdon clandestinely gets the thing he's been listed out with recently is a knee contusion. If that knee contusion flares up and he clandestinely misses the final 8 games of the regular season and the Blazers play some like random 10-day guys off the bench, what are we doing? You ain't got to lie to kick it. Like it's fine. The market should dictate the Malcolm Brogdon deal. And if there's no market out there, don't trade him. Figure it out in the offseason. I don't think it would make sense necessarily to bring him back specifically next year, but that's a problem for the summer and the fall. It's not a problem for right now. Right now is just like, I think the Blazers have kind of deaded all Brogdon trade talks because for the obvious reasons, they value what he's going to do on the court for them the rest of the season. I just want to say that shouldn't do it. The thing that should do it is the inability to get a good trade, the inability to get a good deal. If you can't get a good deal, don't do it. And we might never find out what the deals are, right? Like we might never find out, but like not calling teams that might be interested because you value what Malcolm Brogdon's going to do in a season where you're going to finish with one of the 8 worst records in the NBA seems ludicrous to me. Not a crime, but ludicrous nonetheless. So you might be saying, Mike, what are you so obsessed with? Hopefully you're not. Hopefully you listen regularly and you know what I'm obsessed with. I'm obsessed with seeing the Scoot Henderson, Anthony Simons pairing play together. And with Malcolm Brogdon on the roster, you can still get a whole bunch of that. He's not going to stand in the way. Again, there is no numbers crunch standing in the way. But the number one thing I want to see for the remainder of the season is not Malcolm Brogdon's high level of competence. I want to see as much data as we possibly can on Scoot Henderson and Anthony Simons playing together in a backcourt next to a normal size front line and not in 3-guard lineups so you can figure out what that looks like into the future. That's the most important thing. Let's talk about that and why I think it's the most important thing in the third and final segment of the show. First, let me tell you about Gametime, the spot for last-minute tickets. They're the ticketing app that gives you the complete peace of mind with your purchase. You know, if you're going to go to a sporting event and Blazers games down the stretch, and sometimes you're kind of like, how are we going to get tickets? Or maybe you decide day of and you're kind of like panicking on what sort of marketplace you're going to pursue them in. Why not check out Gametime? What I like about it is that, one, you can get your tickets in like 2 taps. It's just a mere, you pull it up on your phone, pull the app up on your phone. You search Blazers, you see the Moda Center, you see the ticket price, you click on it, you click gimme, and they will be emailed to you in a matter of moments. Plus, their all-in pricing shows you the total up front, so you're not going to like get a surprise convenience fee. If it says it costs you $78, it's going to cost you $78. So why not take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime? Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, use that redemption code LOCKEDON. That's LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. Still a pass first point guard. I'm still Mike Richmond, and you are still listening to Locked On Blazers. The thing I want to see for the remainder of the season is as many minutes as possible with Scoot Henderson and Anthony Simons on the court together, playing next to like normal front lines. So like Matisse Thybulle, Jeremy Grant, DeAndre Ayton. Not 3-guard lineups, not small lineups that are like, oh wow, this 3-guard lineup is getting absolutely French fried because they're too small. I think we kind of know, like the league is getting bigger. Maybe not even getting bigger. The league prioritizes size on the wings. That's absolutely true. Some teams are small at center and small at point guard, but that 2, 3, and 4 spots, length is prioritized. So don't go small at the 3 if you're already going to be a little bit small at the 2. Play normal lineups with Ant and Scoot together. It's the number one thing I want to see for the remainder of the season. To Chauncey Billups' credit, more recently, as Shaedon Sharpe has missed the last 13 games and will miss very likely the remainder of the season, or at least a bunch more, 6+ weeks, and we'll see what the timeline looks like if the Blazers give us a specific update at following surgery later this week. But with Shaedon Sharpe out, and with Scoot Henderson undeniably playing better of late, I think bringing him off the bench has allowed him to build some confidence. I was against it early in the season, and undeniably he's been better off the bench, and it has been useful for him, and perhaps an NBA franchise knows a little bit more than some doofus in his basement. But I'm here to give opinions and thoughts and try to walk you through at least my logic, even if it is not yours. And Scoot and Ant have played together more recently, and Scoot's shooting a little bit better recently, and that pairing has been, at least they've leaned on it more often, and there's been some nights when it's been good. On Friday night against the Denver Nuggets, it was good. Like, they both played well together and shared the court and played. Both were able to play well and be on the court at the same time. Not like Scoot played well, then Ant came in and Scoot didn't do anything, or Scoot went back to the bench. Like, it's possible. But on the whole, it's been bad. Like, undeniable. The reason that the Blazers avoided it, and I think they really tried to give Scoot a good run in the starting lineup, and then eventually, like, this doesn't work, we got to get you out of there and move him to the bench. In part was to, maybe to build up Scoot's confidence, but really the other, like, side of this that I think this needs to be clearly covered is, like, they did it because Ant was not able to be his best self without more time with the ball in his hand and without more space on the court. The number one thing I want you to watch, some of you probably picked this up, but Scoot isn't necessarily always standing in the corner. Also, Scoot's like a really bad cutter off the ball. Ant's not very good at it either, but Scoot is like really bad at cutting. Hopefully he figures that out moving forward in the future. He just sometimes he just kind of gets lost or doesn't finish his cut, and he's kind of standing in no man's land. But he'll be on the wing, so like foul line extended on either the right side or the left side. Watch Scoot's man. That dude will be all the way pulled in to the nail or to the foul line, to like the middle of the court, all the way pulled in. Even with Scoot shooting better recently and playing better recently, teams still don't respect that. They really sag off of him, and that crowds the court and makes it harder for Ant, makes it harder for DeAndre, and makes it harder for everybody, right? On the year, with both Scoot and Anthony Simons on the court, the Blazers have a net rating of minus 21.9, according to cleaningtheglass.com. All the stats I'm about to read you are from Cleaning the Glass, the indispensable stats website from Ben Falk. Minus 21.9. So that means they were outscored by 21.9 points per 100 possessions, normalized for 100 possessions. Their offensive rating, 107.5, extremely bad. Their defensive rating, 129.4, extremely bad. They're both bad on offense and bad on defense on the whole with them together. And if you separate them, the team plays better. With just Anthony Simons and no Scoot Henderson, the minutes where it's just Ant and no Scoot on the court, the Blazers have a minus 5.7 net rating. Outscored by about 5.7 points per 100 possessions. The Blazers aren't good, right? Like, they're not a good basketball team right now, and they're super, super, super young. They got 6 guys who are rookies and sophomores. They got a bunch of young players. They're supposed to be this, right? So, they're supposed to be this. So it's not like they're going to be like, oh, this unlocks them and makes them good. This is just normal bad, right? They're just bad. 5.7 points per 100 possessions. A normal bad team. Defense still pretty stinky. 119.1 offense, 113.4. Significantly better on offense, significantly better on defense with just Ant on the court. With just Scoot and the minutes that Anthony Simons sits, 111.1 offensive rating, 115.6 defensive rating, and a minus 3.8 net rating. They're outscored by 3.8 points per 100 possessions. Again, normal bad. They're a little better than the just Scoot minutes. They're a little worse on offense and a little better on defense. Anthony Simons has been bad on defense this year. He's probably just a bad defensive player. That's that. He's got to be really good on offense to make up for it. That'll be his quest moving forward. The two of them together is stinky. But who cares about stinky? We've made it to the point in the season when you got to figure out whether it works. And you might say, Mike, it's obvious it doesn't work. I think, in general, probably too early to draw that conclusion, but I don't think you're wrong. I think that might be a safe bet, right? That might be a safe bet, that duo doesn't play together. And you can look at a team like the Cleveland Cavaliers with Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell. And when Darius Garland missed some time, they kind of figured out what their identity was going to be with Donovan Mitchell. And now that Darius Garland is back, JB Bickerstaff does a really good job of this, staggering their minutes. They don't play very much together. Darius Garland goes to the bench early, comes back with the second unit. Donovan Mitchell gets to cook. They play basically the first 6 minutes of each half together, and then they close games. They play 13 minutes together all game long, and each of them still play in that 30 plus range. Like, he does a really good job of separating them. The Blazers could handle the Scoot and Anthony Simons pairing like that to some extent moving forward. But they got to find out if it's kind of okay first. And they got to do that by playing them together, and I believe they will. And for me, the most important thing to watch for the remainder of the season is those minutes together with them. It's been bad so far. They've been a little bit better with each of them playing alone without the other one, next to Malcolm Brogdon and his high level of competence, to be sure. And hopefully, I mean, not hopefully, I guess, but they're going to continue to do that. So we'll get to sort of see that move forward. It would have been great to see them either of them play with Shaedon Sharpe and actually like figure out the pairings. Cause to me, that was going to be the most interesting thing, but with no Sharpe, it's going to be just like, let's see them together. Let's see them together. Like I said, you might be right that it doesn't work, but if it doesn't work, and I think, again, safe bet, right? It hasn't been good so far, and they don't seem to mesh because the best version of Anfernee Simons has the ball in his hands and gets to dribble, and the best version of Scoot Henderson has the ball in his hands and gets to dribble, and Scoot is maybe never going to be a shooter, and Anfernee Simons is too small to play full-time shooting guard. Like he's just not big enough or physical enough to play full-time shooting guard. So like he's probably a one, like he's a scoring point guard, and Scoot Henderson is just like point guard sized. You might be right that they don't work together. But if they don't work together, that is a much larger organizational issue that they will have to find out down the line. And why not get as much data as you possibly can in the season where they're not trying to be particularly good, and losing wouldn't be that bad. They probably don't want to get shelled. In January, when they were just getting shelled, it was bad news. They probably want to have some level of competence. And I'm okay with that, I guess. But that doesn't bother me that they want to be okay. But I would prioritize getting as many minutes of Scoot and Anfernee Simons together so you can see it and you can have it on tape and you can figure it out, and then you can make adjustments and try to get better and like trust your coaching staff to make adjustments and all of those things. And if you can't do that, if it just doesn't work and if it's clearly untenable like it has been to date, then you have a lot of data that suggests here's the thing we got to do next. And the thing you got to do next is straighten out the roster. Find out now. Don't wait. That's going to do it for today's show. How about we come back and do it tomorrow? Tomorrow we'll be looking ahead to the trade deadline. It doesn't sound like the Blazers are going to do anything. So we'll round up the latest news. Scoot Henderson's on the Rising Stars game. He's going to play for Tamika Catching's team. That's fun. Maybe we'll talk about that. No, we'll round up the latest news, talk more Blazer stuff. So what we do 5 days a week, wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. I appreciate you listening. I'll talk to you soon.